welcome to this edition of the Eric Miscoll Show. I am Eric Miscoll with EMS Now. Today, we're discussing the issue of HR trends and challenges in the EMS industry. As always, we have Phil Stoten joining as a co-host. Phil is joining us from down under in Australia, where it is very late in the evening. So let's get into this. The component supply chain challenges has certainly been the big story within the EMS industry and the world, actually, over the last 2 years. But right behind that always is when you ask people about the concerns with business, most cited challenge seems to be HR and staffing issues. That's true for the EMS industry. It's true for most industries this day. And this is true globally and in most of the surveys and interviews that we've conducted over the last few years. So to get some insight into this issue and what can be done, we have invited 2 industry experts who are uniquely qualified to speak to this issue. We have joining us today Dr. Marc Achhammer. He's the Chief Human Resource Officer and Group Director of Operations with KATEK Group. KATEK Group, of course, is a global EMS company. And Jeremy Vanselous. Jeremy is electronics manufacturing talent advisor and executive recruiter with the Works Group. Excuse me. That was a tongue twister. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for taking time to join in our conversation today. Let me begin by allowing you each to introduce yourselves and your organizations. And Marc, why don't we begin with you, sir?
Yeah, happy to do so. Eric, Phil, thank you for having me. Marc Achhammer, as you said, I'm the CHRO of the KATEK Group. From a background, I totally started with something different. Actually, I have a PhD in theoretical particle physics and a degree in philosophy. So I can calculate and talk about it for hours, okay? But after that, I went to management consulting, spent a few years there with the typical things, and then was with a few big companies like Siemens, like Sagem.com or Unify, doing small business units, doing a lot of M&As, heading sales, heading broadband business globally, stuff like that. So after quite some time in big companies, I then joined a mid-sized startup, B2X, which does consumer after-sales service for consumer electronics, basically repairing smartphones, mainly globally. So we did that, let's say, for Microsoft in 140 countries based on some technology platform. I was the COO there, and afterwards the speaker of the management board. And from that station, I then joined KATEK in October 2019 as the Group Director Operations, with being responsible for everything which is operations, R&D, or IT. And since March 22, I'm additionally the CHRO, being responsible for the HR topics. So happy to have that task, and it's with all the difficulties a lot of fun. On KATEK, I think Rainer already spent quite some interviews here to explain who KATEK is. Just one sentence: we are a high-value electronics powerhouse in Europe. At the moment, in the stage of doing globalization in Canada and in Asia, with additional purchasing Sigma Point in Canada and having a new facility in Asia to be able to serve customers local to local. So we have several customers who requested from us to be able to do so. And that's the purpose of this globalization. And yeah, I think I leave it with that. And yeah, Eric, again, thanks for having me.
Yes, Marc, thank you very much. Jeremy, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Eric and Phil, for inviting me to join you. I appreciate it. And Marc, it's great to meet you, and go Team Blue, right?
Exactly, you got it.
Team Blue. Jeremy Vanselous, I'm the president and owner of the Works Group. We're an executive search firm that's been working nearly exclusively, really, for the EMS industry for just about 15 years, 14 and a half years. We support EMS companies all over the world. Most of what we do is kind of North America based, but from time to time we'll help in EMEA and APAC as well. from small, micro tier EMS companies up to, very large, tier ones, in their hunt for very specific talent. Most of the disciplines that we really spend most of our time in are across manufacturing, production, engineering, operations, supply chain, program management, quality, and business development. I was born out of Selectron, so my background comes from EMS. I spent 6 years with Selectron prior to their acquisition by Flex. I was program manager for them, and just had the opportunity to join this search firm in 2008. It was a great time to start out in recruiting when everyone's laying off. So we did build some muscle. We built some muscle very fast. And, proud to say that over the last 14 and a half years, I think we've become kind of the go-to search for EMS companies that are really serious about talent.
Good.
It's fascinating, Jeremy, that you started on the talent side during the global financial crisis when people were laying everybody off, and Marc took his role as chief operations officer just at the beginning of the pandemic. So you both have immaculate timing in your own career development.
Makes us stronger, right, Marc?
Yeah,
definitely. Okay.
If you're still here, you're definitely stronger.
Best when you come to the challenge. Okay.
That's right. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So, listen, Marc, Jeremy, I appreciate it, and thank you for the introductions, both of you. And Jeremy, I like that you use the term hunt, because I think that's the hunt for talent seems to be the big challenge in the industry. And not just EMS, but we're here to speak about EMS. So let's get into this. This is a rich topic, and we'll probably just scratch the surface on many of these issues. So let me begin with you, Marc. Marc, from an EMS perspective, you're global, like we said, you're in the 3 major geographies across. What are you seeing as the primary trends and challenges in the current EMS environment?
In the current EMS environment, let's say I would say it's 2 things at the moment. Okay. On the one thing, electronics gets more and more difficult, and also the production of it. So we need more and more specialists, more and more experts, and even not only the experts, but also, let's say, in quotation marks, the simple workers need to understand more and more what they do there. Okay. So you need more and more flexibility, more and more dynamics, more and more understanding on such a level. Okay. So, and that's the one challenge, to get these people and more of these people on board. The other thing is actually everywhere, being it now with Sycamore Point in Canada, or being it in Europe. Okay. And let's see how it works in Asia, where we are about to hire people. Okay. We have a lack of resources and people. So it's hard to get people on board. It's hard to find them. And it's not only the specialists, it's also even on the shop floor level. I would say that's the two main challenges. And maybe to add a third one, which is but more related to the crisis at the moment with the material stuff and so on. Okay. People are in a permanent mode of operational firefighting. Okay. Yeah. I stop a production, I start it again, I stop it for Thursday, I start it for the weekend again. People have to go home, jump back. Procurement staff is in a permanent, difficult telephone calls, difficult issues. So having said that, now since maybe, let's say, 2 years, people are getting tired. People are getting really, tired about it. Okay. Yeah. So to give a start, as 3 of the main things I see. There are more. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that last one, Marc, because I think that that risk of burnout has become really a major issue, particularly when you look at people that are either working in supply chain roles where they're under constant stress and anxiety, or they're working in customer facing roles where they're constantly calling the customer and say, hey, you know that job we promised? We can't deliver it on time. It's not our fault. We think we can deliver it here, but there's every chance I'm going to be calling you again to tell you there's another delay. So there's just a lot of stress in the business at the moment. Jeremy, is that reflected in what you're hearing from other companies?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. You know, the biggest challenge obviously is material availability. The the challenge right behind that is the people availability. And I've always viewed, you know, Phil, you made the comment on LinkedIn leading up to the show, I think yesterday, you know, the next supply chain challenge is people. And I've always thought of people as part of the supply chain. They really are, if you think about it. I mean, they're just like a component. I mean, I don't want to commoditize people, but you can almost think of it that way, right? That if the person isn't there to perform the function, you're still going to have a line down situation, just like if you were missing. So so the availability of people, the burnout piece is very true, especially in procurement and programs where they are delivering that news daily. And the fact that, you know, everybody has to be aware too, that problem's not going away a year from now still, right? So I think we're still pretty much hearing 12, 18, 24 months until we start to really see some improvement in the electronic component supply chain. So it's not even a problem that's going away anytime soon. So, you know, I think the leaders in the organizations really need to be realistic about that in terms of how they handle their people, how they coach their people, how they support their people, right? Because they're the ones doing the hard work every day. And then work strategically behind the scenes to try to make things better for them if they can. You know, the absence of the skill sets is absolutely true. And I don't know how painful that is. In Europe, I imagine it's similar to North America. I imagine it's not quite as bad as Mexico and not quite as bad as Asia. But you know, from where I sit and what I look at, I mean, we have generations missing from the industry. So this too is not a problem that's going to resolve itself within a year or two. I think you know, probably have a 5-year runway before we start to see any real influx of the next gen, right, building into the industry.
You know, that's interesting, Jeremy, because I mean, and I said at the beginning, you know, the issue is one of, you have employer and employee expectations, right? When you're looking to fill a job, and you have to get those in alignment in order to be, you know, kind of effectively running your operation. And clearly they're different. And I've been on record as saying that, you know, you talk about, you know, humans as don't want to commoditize them, but they're also kind of a great confounding variable in a lot of things, right? I think that, you know, business tends to be inherently rational. People tend to confound things sometimes. And we're seeing that, especially with younger generations and expectations changing as they want to come in and what they're going to put up with, the way they're willing to work, those types of things. So, and so I think of this in terms of kind of the recruiting and the retention. So, so let's start maybe on the recruiting piece. First, you got to find them and get them and bring them in, right? So, Jeremy, from your perspective, what's changing there, or is something changing?
Well, recruiting's easy. Anybody can do it. It's a piece of cake. You just find people.
Let's have a call after the call, okay?
So here's it. Like, we'll cover some of this later too, I guess, in the suggestions for companies. But from a recruiting perspective, you know, it's more than just finding a person. You know, I think all of us have tools available to us to go find people, right? The world is very social. We've got great platforms to go find people. Finding people is just the beginning. Now, people are few and far between in certain disciplines, but it's what do you do when you find them? What is the opportunity? What is the story, right? People don't realize a lot of what we do as executive recruiters. We are storytellers. We have to engage the talent. We have to motivate the talent. We have to convince the talent that this is something worth taking a closer look at, or at least opening their ears enough to learn, you know? So a lot of it begins with having a good story to tell. So from a recruiting perspective, finding people is one thing. When you find those people, you've got to have a good, compelling story to tell, at least just to get them to listen. Because in most cases, they're going to be passive. Everyone is working. And then from there, you know, to have a good, decisive process following that to build on momentum and, you know, create that snowball effect that leads to, you know, a successful hire.
I think that's really interesting, Jeremy. And when I think about that, having a good story, do you think you mentioned those generational changes in a generation being missing? When the current generation of potential recruits come through, are they much more concerned about the cultural fit of the companies they work with? Do they want to work with companies that have got a good, environmental outlook, have got the right diversity, have got, the right kind of inclusion, the right social
Absolutely,
aspect?
Phil. Yeah, absolutely, Phil. It is most important, if a candidate, and I have real current examples of this, if a candidate doesn't feel the connection, if they don't feel the chemistry or believe in that culture, they're moving on.
Yeah.
They're not interested. They don't need the job.
Well, that's right.
Do they want the job? Do they want to be a part of that organization? Is that organization doing something different enough? And we're talking EMS here, right? They're services, and everybody's got this similar capabilities, similar, processes. But what is it about the workings of the company and the people that make that the place to be?
Yeah. And culturally, they are all different. And, you mentioned, the phrase "go team blue," having that feeling that being part of a particular global organization means something.
Great example. KATEK is a great example. Yes, they are a great example of doing what they say they're going to do and making an environment where people want to work hard, because it's not easy work, right? And we tell everybody that we work with that this is not going to be easy.
Yeah. So
but
before
you can still be motivated.
Yeah. So before we ask Marc how he's done that and how he's created that good impression, is it the case that the EMS industry generally doesn't give out those good vibes?
They're waking up. They're waking up, Phil. I think the industry was such a brutal industry early in its life, and even when I was with Selectron, and Selectron was the golden child of the industry at the time. They actually had a very strong people culture for the time, but most other companies in that space, they just chewed through people, chewed right through them. It was brutal. And that is absolutely changing. Most of the companies that we're working with, for example, have finally come around. They get it.
Yeah.
It took them some time, but they do get it, and they are trying to do better, and it doesn't happen overnight. And there's a lot of acquisition going on in the industry. So how you pull these companies' cultures together and how you create that harmony, within the business, that takes time as well, and one is not always the same as the other as those things occur. So, but I think in general, Phil, to answer your question, companies are coming around. They're starting to get it.
Yeah. Hey, Marc, you should speak to that.
Yes.
So how do you create Team Blue to be an attractive company to work for? And then how do you build that culture and connect that culture with, with new acquisitions like Sigma Point?
Yeah, let's say when we founded KATEK in 2018, it was clear for us we cannot just be another EMS. Okay, that's why we also didn't call us an EMS. We called us a powerhouse for high value electronics, and that was by purpose. Okay, because we wanted also to have own products. Okay, which people can identify themselves with it. Okay. People, our employees, but at the same time the investors, okay? All that external and internal people can identify themselves with our products and what we do here. And that's why also we by purpose choose markets which are for their own products, which are cool, which are upcoming, which people want to work for, okay? So that's why we are in the charging industry. That's why we are in the renewable energy industry. And so that people can, when they are home at family and friends, they can tell, oh, it's cool, I work for this and that, okay? I do for the charging and so on. So that gives identification. And Jeremy, I fully agree. That's the motivation, the inner fire people have then to work for you. And so when 2018, we said we have to have that. That's how we also target our acquisitions. At the same time, we need a certain scale and we need a certain amount of such topics. We could not be a single trick pony, okay? That's why we also had to grow in that speed on the different levels, okay? So this has several advantages, but one was clearly also to give something for the people, and that's why you know we have the speedboat concept, okay, leaving its own DNA, its own culture to every of our daughters in that way, how they do business in a way. But from day one, we started to think about that everybody has to be renamed, everybody has to be blue. We have to make this overwhelming umbrella that you are part of a bigger thing, okay, from day one. That was one of the few things we said we have to roll out to every acquisition from day one to make that identification, okay? Because let's say if you have that, people want to work for you, and we come maybe to that also. There are enough things not only related to the crisis, but basic things which are difficult to solve with the margins in the EMS industry. Okay, you cannot just throw money. Okay, so you have to have something else why people want to work for, and it's a rare resource. Unemployment rates are as low as they are not for a long time, so it's hard to get people, so they must want to come to you. Okay.
Yeah.
So that hope that answers your question, Phil. That's a little bit how we did it and why. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, you bring up a good point about the money, and I'd like your perspective. And Jeremy, you know, I remember in most job satisfaction surveys when you do it, money pay may not be the #1 issue, but it's always in the top 5, right? So it's
at least.
So it can't be, and you're right. You know, EMS is traditionally a low margin business, so obviously it's challenged there. So so obviously people want to earn a decent wage, they want to live their life, they want to, you know, livable wage, whatever. So how is that changing in the packages? Is it having to trend up? Are we doing more with stocks? Are we doing more with bonuses over base pay? How is that structure possibly changing? Jeremy, what are you seeing?
Yeah, salaries are definitely going up. And I mean, I think we're seeing all that flow to us ultimately as the consumer with inflation, right? So, you know, they're covering their margin, I think, right? One way or another. It might be chewing into it a tad, but it's flowing to us. It is very competitive out there right now, and salaries are certainly going up. I would say across the board. There's not a single, you know, discipline within the business that, you know, is paying the same today as it was even a year ago or a year and a half ago. We've seen salaries increase. I mean, it could be anywhere from 10% sometimes to 40%. The real damage is being done though, where companies are about to lose someone and they go to the ridiculous to retain them. Something that is not even rational to retain them, because they know the pain of replacing that person is going to be so great. Hey, just stop the bleeding, make them stay, pay them a ridiculous amount that's not even sustainable or rational. That then inflates the salary expectations, you know, for certain people. But it's false. It's not even, you know, it's not even real, because it's only temporary. But to speak to the question about salaries increasing, for sure, bonuses, stock, other long-term incentives, those play into different types of roles, you know, typically where, you know, sales revenue kind of is factored in, right? Or ownership of revenue, or customer sat, customer growth. Those things can come in. Most manager level positions and higher, manager, director, VP, C-level, of course, those, I can't think of a single client that I have that doesn't have a performance bonus component to their compensation package. I don't have a single client that doesn't have that component for a manager and above. Some of the smaller companies, they'll do a profit share for the entire company. So everyone has the opportunity to earn a little bit more, you know, perhaps at the end of the year. Yet we're seeing more sign-on bonuses, right, to try to help influence people to make a change. Those are, you know, turning anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, you know, just to sign on and join. And Yeah, I think that's probably.
That's got to get more competitive. The U.S. military is offering $50,000 sign-on bonuses
I saw
for
that.
recruits right now because
Yeah.
they can't get enough people, right?
I almost joined, but I'm too old.
Marc, how is it from the KATEK side then? Is that on the pay and and you went public last year, and so you have the ability with the stock. How is that changing for you?
Yeah, let's say for the management position, I agree with Jeremy. So we always have something like a performance bonus, something like this. Okay, typically in the higher management positions, that's quite standard to have such, and that totally makes sense. Okay, on the levels below, at the moment, it's difficult to find something which is also meaningful to the people. Okay, it has to be meaningful. They have to feel it really. Okay. And so we go more for things like what we call corporate benefits, let's say, okay? So some agreements they can purchase on a lot of shops with rebates and for cheaper things. We try to add a few things around cantina, eating, stuff like this, okay? So we try to walk a little bit away from just money as a component, even in different forms, okay? Stocks is also a form of that in a way, okay? To other things which round up the culture and round up that they want to work there, and that it makes it a comfort. It's not a comfort living, it's hard work, okay? But they feel well when they work there. So we try to find things like this, at least for the levels below the management, okay? Stock, you know what at the moment is happening at the stock exchange, okay? So that's also ridiculous and maybe not the best option at the moment, or you give away a lot, okay? So we target more for these two components, okay? To try to keep people on that way.
Marc, I'm curious how opportunity plays into that, the people's decision. You know, for example, you employ people in places like Eastern Europe, and they've got the opportunity to maybe transfer to facilities in Germany, or they've got the opportunity to train and get to a much higher position that they might not normally have. Are those the kind of things, you know, adding that mobility perhaps that we take for granted to in places that isn't taken for granted? Is that something that helps you recruit, attract, retain staff?
At least I would say we are on the retain level on that thing. I have people now when we are about to purchase Sigma Point, as closing is not yet done, okay? But I have already the first people who ask me whether they can work from Canada. Okay,
can we go to work in Canada? Yeah, it looks nice over there. It's a nice part of Canada they're in as well. And
actually, I agreed already to the first people, so now we just have to make it happen. So yes, the exchange to go to a company which is not your own country is attractive, at least for mid-level management. Let's say, okay, the higher management is somehow a little bit used to it, okay? And even for shop floor and so on, we have some programs running that, let's say, people from Bulgaria come to Germany for training or so they have a week here or two here to see that. And so we get, and the positive effect on that is they like it, and we get also a connection between companies, factories, which work together very closely. But normally the not management people don't see each other ever, okay? So now they see each other, they have a face to it and so on. All that thing was a little bit stopped when we wanted to implement it. We couldn't get really started with the COVID stuff, okay? But now it's taking up, and I think that's also one of the opportunities we as a KATEK can offer, because we have such facilities, okay? And that gives something which is positive for the people. You get a positive feedback on that.
And you can filter the Team Blue culture out around more and more places if you have a bit more mobility. Jeremy, is that something that is generally considered attractive when people are looking to maybe join the EMS industry? Are they thinking about
Younger people,
what opportunities does it offer us in mobility and, you know, training and promotion?
Yeah, Phil, I think younger people really see the benefit in those types of scenarios where they can move around and get exposed to more and meet more people. Typically, when folks have established a family, their mobility changes. Yeah, and you know, just a very small percentage of folks that, you know, are at that point of their life really feel the need to kind of stay rooted, you know, depending on their family dynamics and things going on there. But certainly for younger people or even later stage folks, right, like that are further along in their career and they've gotten that mobility back. Kids are out of college, they're on their own, they've got 10, 15 more years left to work. They too are welcome to, you know, the opportunity to see new places, do new things, you know, with different companies. So, but there is definitely a bucket of people who don't want to move around all that much. But I do see the younger folks. So companies that do have multiple sites, maybe not even necessarily in different countries, but even, you know, the United States has a lot of different options here as well. You know, so if they have a good domestic footprint, even, you know, their chances of attracting talent, in my opinion, are a little bit better. Yeah.
Hey, one of the trends that was kind of accelerated during COVID was the whole automation trend across a lot of industries, but specifically within EMS. So, you know, I'm kind of wondering, and, you know, and Jeremy, you had spoken to the need for different skill sets too, kind of moving forward. So I'm wondering, you know, is the EMS industry going to adapt a model that's going to have fewer people and just simply more automation, and the people that are there are at a higher skill level? Marc, how do you view that?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I would say it goes definitely down that road. Okay. And that does not actually mean to have fewer people, because actually we have growth, we have significant growth. So actually I need all the people. I need automation to foster my growth. Okay. But it goes down that road. We need to do more automation, and not only invest in Germany, but also in the Eastern countries and in all the countries. It's clearly the need is maybe higher in a high cost country than it's a low cost country, but it's in the low cost countries the same thing, because actually the cost point is only one of the points on it. The other point is, and that's for us at the moment, the more important point is the growth point. Actually, giving the raw material crisis aside, maybe, okay, because sooner or later we'll overcome it. And the recession is not yet in our order books, let's say, okay, in that way, if it comes, okay, that's also a discussion. So the order books are full. We have a higher demand, and the demand will not, even if you would have a certain recession, okay, the demand will not really go down. The electrification of products is so steeply growing that you can't stop it. It's maybe not so quick or a little bit less quick, but it's going, okay? So what I need is, I need more power to produce. And that means, and since I have a market which has a low unemployment rate, I need automation plus the people I can get to even do the growth I could do. So automation is more from the growth perspective and needs than from the cost perspective.
Yeah, and that's then finding the right automation, isn't it, Marc? It's finding adaptable automation. It's finding automation that does result in, you know, the need for maybe fewer operators, or the ability of a smaller number of operators to actually produce more product. So, you know, maybe smarter equipment where one person can be controlling inspection on 3 or 4 lines rather than just standing by one machine. I'm certainly talking to a lot of EMS CEOs and COOs that are telling me they're looking hard at adaptable automation specifically to mitigate skill shortages.
Yes, for sure. It's automation has to be in that way. Now, a little bit of a differentiation you have to do. You might have some products which are just running, so can be a very dedicated automation, okay, for that part. But then it has been a very close loop with the customers. And the rest has to be really quite flexible so that you can really do different products, different things. which again demands a high skill set from your people, which means you have to do more training, you have to have more intelligent people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So if you go to upskill, do you get much help from academia? Do you get much help from government? Where is it basically down to you to train those people, or are there incentives around? I mean, Eric already mentioned that Germany is famous for its apprentice and engineering programs.
So the apprentice programs are down to us, and they are very important, and they are really good, okay, to get people to what you really need, okay. The government is helpful in the way that you really have the technical universities and so on, where I can really get good qualified people. Beyond that, it's not so much of a help, okay. Beyond that, it's up to us, and we try to develop ideas. Let's say we are about to sponsor lecture halls in technical universities, so they are named by KATEK.
Okay.
So people get used to our name already during their time. So you have to grab the people before they really hit the market.
Yeah.
That's actually where we try to aim to, because once they hit the market, you're already late, more or less.
Yeah.
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 You know,
And
go ahead.
I think
Jeremy.
we need to do a better. I think we need to do a better job of that here. I think those types of programs are just very light. I think John Mitchell and the IPC are trying to kind of like lead the way on standardization and certifications, and how we get those deployed into schools, though, is a whole nother like ball of wax. I'm hoping that this is a flow down component of the CHIPS Act, and that they will dedicate some funds to actually, building programs for people to learn and come out of school certified to be able to go build semiconductors and other electronics. It should be a component of that, I think. But today, my opinion is that we're pretty light on, and we're behind the ball, frankly, on preparing ourselves for that next gen.
for that. Yeah, one hopes that some of that 280 billion finds its way into STEM education and actually promoting that as an
Not
opportunity.
just luncheons. Yeah.
Yeah, most of it's on the employer, just like Marc said. They kind of take the bull by the horns there, and I think that's what companies are doing here as well.
Hey, Jeremy,
you see some-
related to that though, have employers had to kind of in some way loosen their hiring criteria to get people who may not have had the skill set, then bring them in and then take on more of the training responsibility, which you have.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Programs are built for. So
yeah, I am seeing that. I'm not real close to that, Eric. I will hear about that because most of the work that we do is like incredibly precise. A company pays us a lot of money to go find something very, very specific, and they're not willing to compromise on anything. And I get that, and they shouldn't have to, and they don't. Yeah. But for other entry-level positions, to attract the talent in, to teach them the business, for sure, if they're finding talent that is transferable, with a good, say, technical aptitude, but maybe they haven't, soldered, but they've built gearboxes, right, or something like that, then they've got that aptitude. Let's bring them in here and teach them the business for sure. They have to do that because there is no one, right? They don't exist. Those people don't exist. So we're in the process of building them right now. We are in the process of building our future talent pool. But we're at the beginning.
There's no EMS university that's cranking out operators, so it's
but there are some more, like IPC, I think, is doing more some basic stuff to get people introduced. Marc, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. One of the differences within Europe and Germany specifically is the cooperation or the involvement of work councils within the companies and what they do, and that, I guess, could help or even complicate matters at times. But speak to kind of the impact that those are having in this environment.
And it's an HR session, so the answer is it depends on people. So in principle, I would say the work council is a very helpful thing, okay? Because you have somebody you can talk with, and you can agree on measurement things for all the employees in the group to bring things forward, okay? But you need somebody on the other side who understands that, and with whom you can discuss the right balance between what is employers' right, what is rights of the employees, and so on, and how to manage to come through certain situations. Okay, and as always, situations are on some time on the more on the one side, next time more on the other side, because the situation demands it. Okay, so in crisis, employees have to be more flexible. In good times, employer has to be more generous, has to be more in that way, and it's a tit for tat somehow. Okay, but you have to have somebody on the other side and also on the management side. Okay, so I saw on both sides people who don't really understand, okay, how to do that. But if you do it right, it's a positive thing from my point of view, and you can really push things within a company. It's hard work. You have to have meetings, you have to have the discussions, you have to explain yourself. Okay, if you're quite egocentric, it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, it's not my way or the highway, is it? You've got to be able to talk to people and understand their needs as well.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just looking at some of the questions we've been getting online, and there's one theme I do want to pick up on before we kind of wrap here, and that is one of, I guess it's all related to immigration and workers coming in, and maybe Jeremy, and even within the United States, kind of bringing workers to the work kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could do more of that. I think making it easier for people to obtain green cards, or permanent residency, at least. The biggest challenge that we have there is a lot of the North American domestic EMS players, they do a good portion of their business is ITAR, right? International Traffic in Arms Regulation. Yeah. So you have to have permanent residency or citizenship in order to work on those programs or in those facilities. So we limit the availability of talent by doing that, right? And the reality is a lot of the people who are interested in doing this kind of work and who have actually gone to school for this work have done it in Mexico, have done it in India, have done it in Asia, have done it in Europe. They have not done it here because we did not have an industry for a healthy enough, large enough industry to support that. So if we can create an environment where people can obtain that level of citizenship and meet that regulatory criteria, the companies are going to have access to talent much faster. And that's North America specific. Reading some of the recent articles coming out of Mexico too, with Jabil and Sanmina adding 6,000 jobs here, 12,000 jobs there. I mean, it's tremendous. Even in Mexico, I think Mexico is going to start running into people problems in the near future as well, because they're going to run out of resources. So if we can harness the global supply chain of people, right, then we may be able to relieve some of our pain as well.
Yeah. Marc, do you see migration as part of the solution?
I would say yes. Okay, in the first step, it has to be somehow focused. Okay, what I just saw with Sigma Point, okay, is somebody coming from Syria to Canada, okay, in a program from the Canadian government, actually, okay, which I found very good because it brought the employer together with highly qualified potential employees, in that case from Syria also, okay. Europe is also open for that. What I am a little bit missing is a program which helps you to find the right guys, okay. I can tell somebody I need this and that, and say, give me 3 CVs, and I make an interview through Teams or whatever, okay? Find somebody that I want this guy, and say, help me getting this guy to Europe also, okay? People are coming to Europe, but I have to find them myself, which is difficult, language, all that stuff in Europe. So I see it as part of the solution. Also diversity and so on is a big thing, and I want to foster that. But actually at the moment, it's a little bit difficult because it's not really pushed by something to find the right guys. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a big pity if shortages of talent, and this will be the same in the US, Jeremy, if shortages of talent get in the way of us trying to get a more diverse workforce, because those two things can kind of contradict each other a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Gentlemen, when we started this conversation, I knew that we would just scratch the surface on many of these issues, but this has been a very good discussion, and I appreciate your willingness to share. I want to wrap by kind of asking you to maybe offer some advice to people, other EMS who are out there who are struggling with these issues and dealing this. What advice would you offer to EMS companies who are struggling with the issues of staffing and retaining good workers? And Marc, why don't I begin with you, sir?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I would say my advice would be find a vision, find a product, find something people can identify with. We had that at the beginning of our discussion here. I think that's a key element. Also because even if you would do something in salaries and the salary numbers Jeremy mentioned, I cannot afford. Okay, so there will be always somebody who pays more. Okay, you have to have the right salary. It's a hygiene factor, but it's not a factor really keeps you the people finally, because there is always somebody around the corner who pays more. There are people who pay more than Google, so come on. Okay, there's always somebody who pays more. So you have to find the other factors. You have to go for the other factors. And as I said, at the moment, with all the crisis draining the cash away like hell, okay, you cannot afford it, actually also. So find a vision, find a product, find identification why people want to work for you. That's my advice. Don't be just another EMS, okay? Don't be just something who like this. Go for some vision, some product, some identification. That would be my advice.
That's very good. Jeremy, what would you offer up?
Yeah, I love Marc's term there of find that identity, right? Help your people identify with something. That was a little light bulb for me. I really like that. And it kind of talks to the whole retention piece. I think it all starts, if you want to minimize your pain today, focus on retention. And how do you focus on retention? Well, I think that starts by talking to your people, right? Yeah, I mean, your managers need to be talking to the people, understanding what they care about. And then follow through. Don't let it just be all words. You've got to have action behind your words that demonstrates that you're listening to them and that you care about them. People are going to want to work for you if they know that if you care about them.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
If you have to go outside, if you have to attract talent, I always have a tendency of like working the problem backwards. Okay, to the very beginning. And the very beginning always starts with planning and consensus. When you decide, when you define that you have a need, the people who are playing into that decision process, make sure that consensus is there. We all agree. So you have to have a very clear picture of what you need, everyone who's involved. From there, you position yourself to be swift and decisive in your process. You must be swift and decisive in your process. Talent will not sit around and wait for you in this market, especially when you are the one going after them. Okay, so swift and decisive. What that does is that then builds momentum, and you want to play on momentum. And if you can keep nice, positive energy and momentum in that process, you will land that talent. You will win.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I would just end with be the brand that people want to work for. And, you know, we know about the brands that people want to buy from, but be the brand that people want to work for. And that's culture. That's a whole bunch of other things.
It is.
Good. Gentlemen, thank you. This has been terrific. Hopefully we get a chance to revisit this again in the future. I think you two, having just met, I think you were very complimentary with each other on this show and very good guests. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Really appreciate it.